Praise the Lord, children, sisters, friends. Last week we did the birth of Samuel, and this week we are going to do uh, Hannah dedicates Samuel. That is in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verses 21 to 28. Now let's read along. This is part 2, okay? Read along verse 21. When the man Elkanah went up with all his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, "After the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always." "Do what seems best to you," Elkanah, her husband, told her. "Stay here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word." So the woman stayed at home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. After he was weaned, she took the boy with her as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When they had slaughtered the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. And she said to him, "As surely as you live, my lord, I am the woman who stood here beside you, praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he shall be given over to the Lord, for he worshipped the Lord there." And the he was Samuel, and Samuel worshipped the Lord there. This is the word of the Lord. Last week, we saw how Hannah was in a difficult situation. She couldn't have children, and so her husband Elkanah married another woman who didn't have children. She had many children. This rival wife, tormented Hannah over this. We read how Hannah became so troubled and overwhelmed that she couldn't eat. So she poured out her heart to God at the tabernacle in prayer. And that she made a vow that if God would give her a son, she would give him back the son to serve God forever. She prayed boldly and persistently until she felt that God had heard her prayer. And then she went away in faith at peace. And sure enough, not long after, God answered her cry and she gave birth to a son and she named him Samuel. Now, Hannah is not making God alone by giving back the son. Okay? She's saying in verse 28, "I am giving back what I asked for. As long as this boy lives, he's given back to God as that which I asked from God." And in verse 11, she said, she vowed that if God gave her a son, then she said, "I will give him back to the Lord all the days of his life." And the boy, it is said in the word of God that the boy and he worshipped the Lord there. He meaning Samuel. He was a small boy. See, his mother brought him up in the fear of the Lord, taught him how to pray, how to worship. I have seen children, at least in our house, we had children 2 years old, 2.5 years old, just worshiping the Lord. It's how we bring them up, yeah? In this section, we could simply say that Hannah kept her word, how she was so faithful to her vow. We must remember that she had no child. She made a vow, God gave her a child, and she fulfilled her vow. What a beautiful way of fulfilling a vow. She had nothing. She was barren. That other woman kept on taunting her. But a woman of faithfulness like Hannah would be a wonderful example. We find a woman giving back to God what God has given her. A woman giving back to God what belongs to God. That reminds me of Jesus, when he said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God." Many a times we are neither giving Caesar what we have to give the government, and neither are we giving God his first place. We are so much in the world at times, and we cannot blame Satan all the time. Okay, it's our choice. We make a choice to worship God, to give him first place or not. Okay, now it is Hannah who demonstrated that and it looks like she wanted to honor God as God. She showed us how she really honored God. She gave to God what God had given her, the son. her one and only son. Now, and her faithfulness, her integrity, her obedience, her faith, all was crystal clear that she meant that there was a great cost for her obedience. She did it. See, after she had the child, she could have very easily have said, no, 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 I can't part with this child, you know. God, you've given me one child after so many years. But she didn't. That was a living sacrifice she gave unto the Lord, this child of hers. Yeah. Now, mind you, she never knew whether she would conceive again. The very fact that she told God, you give me and you see, I'll give him back to you. That was enough. That was her integrity, actually, her faithfulness. And she was very obedient. Whatever she told God she would do, she obeyed that and her choice, and she gave him. And she had that faith in God that God can do anything. She remembered who's this Sarah. She remembered Rebecca. She remembered them when they had no children. How God really gave them children. No, so we have to remember when we are in a problem, we must remember what God did to certain people so that we can be encouraged and claim those promises for ourselves. Now, certainly Hannah told Elkanah about her vow because she knew that Jewish law permitted a husband to annul the wife's vow if he disagreed with it. That is given in Numbers 30. And Elkanah agreed with her decision and allowed her to remain at home with her son when the rest of the family went on its annual trip to Shiloh. We must admire Elkanah, for what he said and did. For this was his firstborn son, and the son of his beloved wife. He loved her so much. And now the father would be separated for a son for the rest of their lives. And actually, the firstborn son had to be redeemed by a sacrifice, by offering a lamb in place of the firstborn. So that was the requirement of God. Now, as a Levite, uh, and a Nazarite, a prophet, a judge, Samuel would faithfully serve the Lord and Israel and help to usher the new era in the Jewish history. See, now he was so faithful, Samuel, but we can't say that of his sons. They were not like him. He was a faithful man. And actually, see, the father starts well and the sons don't walk in the footsteps in that time during that period of the Bible. Now imagine today, even if the father's walking in the light, the children may not walk. Of course, there may be some children that will be obedient, but you see, the vast majority are not. Okay, now let's see what Hannah's gift of Samuel was to God. The man Elkanah and his house went up to offer the offering to the Lord. And there are two things here to point out of Elkanah's devotion. He went each year to worship at Shiloh at the tent of meeting, this seems like a voluntary pilgrimage beyond what was required. Certain requirements was to be done by the Jews, but here was this guy. He went beyond that, more than that's why he made a vow. The other things were the law had told them that they had to do, but this guy made vows, and he must have been a real holy man. No doubt he got married the second time, but that's because Hannah didn't have children. So they at that time God had told them increase and multiply. So he wanted to have a family, so he got married again, and he had a family. Okay. Then secondly, he paid his vows. You know, now vows are voluntary commitments or acts of devotion to God beyond what is required. They often have to deal with the quality of them. God, if you do this, then I will do this. We don't know what the vows were about regarding Elkanah, but he was going faithfully every year to fulfill the vows to God. Yeah. He was a man of integrity and kept his commitment to God. But Hannah didn't go, for she said to her husband, as soon as the child is weaned. What's the meaning of weaned? When that means he stops drinking the mother's milk and he starts having solid food, little, 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 and then the mother's milk stops altogether. So she kept him, and obviously he must have been around 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 years old, because in those days the mothers used to nurse their children right up to the age of 4. So it could have been around that age. And Hannah takes him back to the temple, and uh, she gives him to the Lord. She had vowed to give Samuel to serve God under a Nazarite vow for his whole life. Now you must remember, he's not a Nazarene. Jesus was a Jesus was a Nazarene. He was living in Nazareth. Now Nazarene was a person who lived in Nazareth. But Nazarite is a person which, they're radicals actually. Their hair they cannot cut their hair, they cannot drink wine, they cannot eat grapes, they cannot eat any of fruit of the grape, lest they get little intoxicated. They're not allowed to have that. They're not allowed to attend the funeral or touch the parent, father, mother, brother, sister. They cannot touch them. They have to stay far away, lest they become unclean. Because they are dedicated to the Lord. So they cannot do all these things that a normal Jew would do. There are some people who would, offer themselves as Nazarite, and they would do it for about a year, maybe 6 months. They would do that. But here, Hannah had already made a vow that she would make him be a Nazarite all the days of his life. No? So that is the kind of thing. And so Samuel was a baby when she gave birth to him, no, and then she had to wait for those 2, 3 years, 3.5, 4 years. And she couldn't go to Shiloh because she thought when she goes, she's going to give this child away and she'll not bring him back again. So now Elkanah was a good man because he agreed. He agreed along with his wife. Like I said, it was his firstborn now from this beloved wife of his, and but he agreed because he is a good man. He made vows, and so he knew what the wife or his wife's vow was, because she was giving the best. Most of the time, we give something which is left over. When I was a Catholic and we had a statue up there, and we had, what should I say? I used to put oil in the lamp, and my uncle had sent us some olive oil from Portugal. So one day when I made a little salad, it was rancid, and we couldn't eat it. So I said, I will put it in the lamp. It'll burn. But conviction came to me at that time. God knew my heart that I really loved Him, and conviction came to me immediately, saying, "You don't give God what is bad or rotten. You give Him the best." And so I took that oil and I threw it out. So that is the conviction that I got. So here was Anna giving God the best, the first fruit of her womb. She was just giving Him that. No, so now she was taking the son to Shiloh along with her husband and the family. According to Numbers 15:8 to 10, it gives you the rule, the vows, how it has to be fulfilled, the requirements for that. But she took a 3-year-old bull instead of a 1-year-old bull, which has more value. Remember, 1-year-old bull has some value, 2 years old bull has more value than the one, and the 3 years old bull has more value than the 1 year. So she was so generous, she was so happy that God had answered her prayer and that the child would serve God. And so she gave a 3-year-old bull instead of a 1-year-old, which was more than valuable. No, it is really something, when you're so happy, you want to give everything of yours. Then she also gave an ephah of flour, about say 50 pounds or 20, almost 23 kilos. Sorry. about bushel. Instead of giving 3/10 of an ephah, she gave one full ephah. Instead of giving a third part of the 10 parts, she gave a full measure of that. They also gave a full skin of wine. Now, it could be about 30 to 40 liters. It's not said, because skins uh, were the wine bag, a bottle of wine, they made out of the skin. If you remember, in the olden days, now they got taps and water flowing in the building, they can take connection. But in our olden days, they used to collect the water in a bag, of made of leather, and they would go and water. It had a little spout, and they would climb up the 10-story, 5 stories, whatever, and water the cemented area. Okay, so here, now, instead of giving, she gave a full skin of wine. Now we don't know what kind of a skin bag it was. Instead of giving half an hin of wine, which is just over half a gallon, that is about 4.5 liters or something like that. Yeah. So they gave perhaps a gallon or two or four. We don't know how many gallons they gave. After 3 or more years, she had to now come back to Eli, and she reminds him of who she is, and she tells him that she prayed and her prayer was answered when she was praying. She reminded him of the time. She even quotes Eli's word to her from their previous encounter, and that he said, uh, why are you drinking? He asked her that, why do you get drunk? On wine. So she reminded him, because that was one uh, sentence that what he spoke to her, he would remember all his life. Because she corrected him at that time, and she says, no, I'm in agony and I'm just crying out to our Lord. Now she said, the Lord has granted me my petition that I may made to him. Here next to her is her son, and she hands the son over to Eli. Now, Hannah's gift to God. This was her firstborn son, the most valuable child. This was her only child. She didn't know whether she would have other children. This was the product of a miracle, real miracle. All these years she never had children, but now suddenly, when she prayed to the Lord answered, opened her womb, and gave her a child. And he was given and the child, no, was given while he was still a child, which must have been terribly difficult. Imagine a mother leaving a child 4-year old. I mean, if the mother doesn't want to have the child, and leaving the child is another thing. But this Hannah loved her child very much, and she was giving God the very best. This was an extraordinary gift, act of devotion to the Lord. And here now the story ends, and we will continue it with the next chapter. Now, what do we learn from this? We should keep our commitments to God also, just as Elkanah kept his vow, and especially just as Hannah kept her vow. So we are to keep our commitments that we make to God. Elkanah could have overruled that vow of hers when she knew, but he was in agreement with her. Because the husband has authority. If he didn't know that she's made a vow and she tells him that such and such is my vow, he can overrule it, but he didn't do that. Now, in Deuteronomy 23:21 says, if you make a vow or a commitment to the Lord your God, you should not delay fulfilling it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin if you don't uh, fulfill your vow. Why it's said here as soon as you can? Because sometimes we make a vow and we forget. So when we make a vow, as the vow is fresh in our mind, we should immediately fulfill that vow. We should give generously, even sacrificially to God, because God gave us willingly, lovingly, wholeheartedly. He gave us His Son, and He sacrificed His Son for us. What a, what a wow! What a wonderful thing our God has done for us. We won't do those things, but He did. Hmm? And now what she does is she shows up with this offering of hers. They brought the to the tabernacle of God, and which went beyond their requirement. I said they had to give 1 year old, they gave a 3 year old. So likewise, they did so many things which was more than what was required. This certainly shows, shows that, she was giving up. Most importantly, she was giving up her son Samuel unto the Lord. And what is he? How does your giving compare to this giving now? Are we really giving till it hurts us, or are we giving surplus? Are we giving what we have extra, which we can, we don't need it? Are we giving like that? Even money, because we got extra money, we are giving unto the poor, or in our poverty, like that old woman that she put the last penny of all that she had, she put it into the offering box. While the Pharisees and the other Jews, they gave up, they had what they had surplus. So, what is our kind of our gift that we are giving unto the Lord? And He blesses those who gives generously and sacrificially to Him. Are you generous with God? See, God will never stay indebted to us. He will give you tenfold, hundredfold. Now, He not only gave uh, who's this Hannah a son first. She gave him back, and he gave her five. God gave her 5 more children. That means all in all, she had 6 children. One she offered to the Lord, and she had 5 more children. You know, and that means 3 sons and 2 daughters. See how good our God is. He will, you try giving God something and see what He will give you. Now, God took care of Hannah. He remembered her, He blessed her with the children. If we give God something, He will give us many times more. And if you do something for God, you see, you cannot say, oh God, I did this for you, therefore you must do that for me. No, 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 you can't, He won't let you say that. We are not supposed to say that also, because He will just pour His blessings on you. God brought something good, out of her trials for others. God not only answered her prayers, through her, God acted for all of Israel by giving Samuel to them, huh, who will lead the people back to God in his life, in the new life. Yeah. And it was through her difficulties, her faith, that God accomplished this. If she had not surrendered this child to God, we could not have had a Samuel. We would have had the Samuel of the world, but we would not have had the Samuel who was a prophet, was a priest. He was uh, um, uh, he was a judge who was leading them into righteousness. God can use our trials and to bless others. God can never, when you are faithful to God, He will never let you down. He can never let you down. He will always stand by you. And don't think that because you're having trials, God is not there. He has been and He is with us every step of the way, because His promise is true. He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So, what must we do? We must, when we go through struggles, we must thank God for it, that we are partaking in His struggle, in His sacrifice. Not, we don't thank God for for the problems we're having. No, we have to thank God, and that we are partakers in His sacrifice. That's the way we should thank God. Now, trust God and wait for Him to act. He will not only take care of you, He will use your trials to bless others. We have to remember that. It is, you think of who's this Samuel, no? What a way he was used by God. Like I said before in the previous chapter, he anointed 2 kings. One was Saul, one was David. Saul was a failure and David was a success. And like that, he did so much for Israel. Okay, that's the end of part 2. Now let's give thanks. Thank you, Father, for this time, and thank you for your word. Help us to be like Hannah and Elkanah, who are